morning, I'm speaking about Montessori education, a Montessori approach to human development. Montessori education follows and is guided by nature. It follows the natural human development of a child from birth to maturity. Cosmic education is an intrinsic part of Montessori education. Every living creature, plant, animal, has a natural way of sustaining itself, generation after generation. In order for education to be more sustainable for our future generations, we need to look at it in a very different way. This education system started more than 100 years ago by a remarkable woman, Dr. Maria Montessori, an Italian who was the first woman to graduate from the University of Rome. She graduated at the top of her class. Her interests in education came about through the plight of the child in the fields of education, psychology, sociology, philosophy. Her approach is known to be unsurpassed in helping the individual reach their full potential. The Montessori approach to human development is a preparation for life. In order to prepare an individual, their ability to stand in society and maintain it, we need to look at what are the things that allow an individual to become and to belong as a social human being. What are the things that allow an individual to adapt to their time and place in society as contributing members? What underpins Montessori education is something that is called the needs and tendencies of man. Within each individual, we have basic needs for food, shelter, and warmth. Once these initial needs have been met, we are gregarious and curious individuals. We like to interact in our environment. We're social beings, we like to communicate. In actual fact, communication is the one thing we cannot not do. We do it with everything in our being. The way we stand, the way we talk, the way we look, we engage and we communicate with everything. In order for us to get to know our world, we need a certain amount of order. Order in the environment helps us to become secure. It helps us to orientate ourselves to our time and place. And once those factors are in place, we like to explore. We like to find out about our environment. We like to manipulate. We like to work. As we work, we repeat an activity many times. And through our repetition, we start to focus our attention, to build up our concentration. And through the repetition, we perfect our skills, engage in our environment, and learn. The interesting thing about education, the word educate comes from the Latin educare. It means to draw out. Education, the shin, is the action. So this implies that within each individual, all of the tools that are necessary for an individual to become and belong as a social human being are within him. So what we need to look at then is what are the things that would allow an individual to reach their full potential. Dr. Montessori noticed that an individual on their path to adulthood goes through the 4 planes of development, blocks of time in an individual's life when certain things happen. These blocks of time are broken up into 6-year periods, 0 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 to 18, and 18 to 24. The first primary phase, 0 to 6, is a very practical phase. The 6 to 12 is much more intellectual. The 12 to 18 is practical again, and 18 to 24 is more intellectual. The primary phase, there is a lot of upheaval happening in an individual's life. And then the next phase is calmer, the 12 to 18, there is lots of activity happening again, lots of biological change. and the last phase is much calmer again. These phases are broken up into sub-phases, where there's marked upheaval, the red lines going upwards, 0 to 3, and corresponding calmer consolidatory periods. And this happens in every single phase of development. In the first phase of development, this primary construction of the individual, we have an individual that incarnates the totality of the environment onto the brain. The first phase is very much of an unconscious absorption mind. The 3 to 6-year-old is much more conscious. What we do in this particular phase of development is that we need to consider how a human being learns. We need to produce an environment that is conducive to allowing this to happen. But nature is very clever. It helps us in many ways. We have something that happens that is called a sensitive period, when we have a particular sensitivity and sensibility towards absorbing certain aspects of the environment. And this guides the absorbent mind. The absorbent mind is like a huge sponge, it takes in everything. The way the 0 to 6-year-old engages is through the senses. They like to touch, they like to manipulate, they like to smell, they like to feel. In actual fact, we all do this. But in a time of a sensitive period, we do this with great facility. Now, these children are very sweet, and they've got curly hair, and they're gentle in nature. By the time you move on to the next phase of development, the sweetness of character changes somewhat. They are much more gregarious, they are interested in justice, they like to go around in herds, they are interested in their peers, and in actual fact, Dr. Montessori named it the age of rudeness and serenity. Anyone who's got a 6 to 12-year-old will understand what this means. What is interesting about them is that they like to engage with their world through the intellect, through their imagination, through abstracting. So Dr. Montessori, when asked, what do we give these children? She said, you must give them the world and more. She felt that emotionally, intellectually, psychologically, in every possible way, that these children were the strongest that they would ever be in life. She felt that they were capable of having all of the information up to a university age. So this means that you would have to look at how you would deliver this. You would have to consider that you couldn't do it in a rote learning fashion. So the teachers in these environments are consummate storytellers. They tell grand stories of how the earth began and how evolution happened. They ignite within these children a complete fascination for the rest of their life. The 12 to 18-year-olds are different. They're emotionally, intellectually, psychologically in a state of flux. They need a different kind of environment, an environment getting back to nature. So Dr. Montessori suggested something called the Erdkinder, children of the earth, where these children are developing their social personality, who they are in the world, and how they engage in the world. So she suggested that these children be allowed to live in a community away from parents, because their peers at this stage are much more important than their parents. It would be a micro-community that would engage in farming as is appropriate to their particular surroundings. If they were on a wine farm, all the aspects of wine farming would be engaged. They would also run a little hotel where parents could visit. They would do all the cooking, cleaning, managing. And you would, in the end, you would have a very different type of individual who would have a very deep sense of connection with the earth by reconnecting at this age, and also a sense of community. The next phase of development that we go into is the 18 to 24-year-old. These people are very ready. They would be very well prepared to enter tertiary education, having a very clear direction of where they fit in society. These individuals, Dr. Montessori called that they would be in the stage of the age of happiness. And if you look at this long preparation of an individual, birth to maturity, There is a lot of preparation that we need to consider if we are going to meet the needs of a human who is going to know their time and place and understand what their role is in society. To give you an idea, this is what we call the Nido environment of the Montessori classroom. It is an environment particularly catered to movement, language, and freedom and independence. This is the infant community. These children love to do the things that they see their parents doing. This is a 3 to 6 environment for the Montessori school. Everything is scaled down to the child's size. There's only one of everything, so children need to wait. They learn certain social skills. The environment offers freedom, independence, movement, opportunities to develop all the social skills to absorb their culture. The little boy on the right is working with bells. These are the Montessori bells. He's pairing and learning about the diatonic scale. The little one on the left is listening intently to the pitch of the bell. Dr. Montessori took abstract concepts and made equipment to meet the needs of these children. Maths equipment, multiplication, complex numbers, addition and subtraction. Puzzle maps showing the parts of the world. This is the elementary classroom with timelines, more maths equipment to meet the growing needs of this particular age group, and more work for them. Dr. Miriam Montessori and her son, and this is her at the age of 81. She was still working and planning a trip to Africa just before she died. To meet the children, to meet the human potential, these children will be very differently prepared. And I hope you feel that this is an inspiring way to look at the growth of an individual from birth to maturity. Thank you.